Good evening. It looks like your tax bill will go up so we can pay for illegal immigrants and asylum seekers. Labour keep telling us about this financial black hole. Now, it turns out that a large chunk of that is the bill for illegal immigrants, and that problem is set to get worse, not better. The Home Office has been massively overspending when it comes to illegal immigration. Over the last 3 years, the Home Office estimated it would cost the taxpayer £320 million to handle asylum, border control, visas and passport operations. It costs £7.9 billion. That's an overspend of £7.6 billion. Whoopsie. The initial estimates of this year's cost are roughly £6.4 billion, but just look at the numbers coming across the channel now and the total lack of a plan to deal with them. We've had 7,000 arrivals since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, more than 20,000 this year. The queue in Calais is getting bigger, not smaller. There's no deterrent anymore, so every single person who arrives will be able to claim asylum, then appeal again. We're going to have to build new sites to accommodate these people. The actual cost of this is going to be eye-watering. So when Sir Keir Starmer says this...
I will be honest with you. There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden. To accept short-term pain for long-term good. The difficult trade-off for the genuine solution.
And then Rachel Reeves says stuff like this.
We were left a £22 billion black hole for this year in the public finances. Those are numbers, and that was spending covered up by the previous Conservative government.
What they're not telling you is that a large chunk of that black hole is to pay for illegal immigrants. Another large chunk of that is the £3.1 billion Labour borrowed to pay the unions, by the way. But when this miserable budget lands and there are tax rises, there's no winter fuel payments for some pensioners, capital gains tax will probably go up, so you don't get much of a return on your investments. Inheritance tax will probably go up, won't it? So the money that your loved ones or you have worked all your lives for to pass down to the next generation is just ripped away from you, just so we can give it to people who have come to Britain illegally. Sir Keir Starmer, he can go around Europe and shake the hands of as many European leaders as he wants. Maybe he should press the flesh of a few British people and see how they feel about that. Let's get our thoughts on my panel tonight. We've got GB News superstar, it's Nana Acquia. We've got Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Nana, I will start with you on this. Do we have to be a bit honest here? Or do they have to be a bit honest now and start telling us, well, it's one thing that your tax bill's going to go up, inheritance tax, capital gains, whatever happens, happens. But actually, quite a lot of that is going to go to our asylum system.
Well, I mean, first of all, they came in and said, oh, no, we're not going to have the Bibi Stockholm. We're going to kick everybody out of the hotels. We're going to not use the army bases. There literally is nowhere to put these people. I think they need to start answering questions, because as far as I've seen, the Labour government have not answered questions. They're not answering if they're asked what they're going to do about it. In fact, in the big speech that he gave the other day, he didn't mention immigration, which is the big topic right now. It is clear that it is going to cost this country an absolute out-and-out fortune. There is, as you said, no deterrent, and also the fact that they are simply, they've got rid of Rwanda, so they're just going to repeat the mistakes of the last government. Yeah. I don't see anything positive coming out from the Labour Party.
Keir Starmer was pleading on us to, abide by the social contract. Look, if you've got the broadest shoulders, then, you can pay a bit more now. Look, honestly, you just pay a bit more now, and it's for the greater good. Well, actually, hang on a minute. If 6-point-something billion, dare I say even nudging 8 billion quid of that, is to go for people who've literally just arrived here illegally across the channel or by other means in the back of a lorry, well, I don't think the vast majority of the British public will consent to that.
But there's two things I think we should focus on. Firstly, when he said he wants to be honest, if he really was going to be honest, he'd tell us he had no plan. All through the election period, he was accused of that. Turns out it was true. If you look at what the Chancellor was saying, that she didn't know about the hole in the budget, that's an utter lie. We have the budget of office responsibility. What were they doing? They know where every penny is. It's public finances because they're in the public. And also the biggest addition to that cost is the decision she's made since becoming Chancellor.
i.e. the union stuff.
Well, that
And the winter fuel allowance.
and the winter fuel payment as well. And what's stunning, they've said there was a suspicion that they weren't really saying what they planned to do. That suspicion has come true now. There's no doubt we're in a tough place, but all through the election they didn't mention that tough place.
So, look, Matthew, I know you disagree with a lot of what's been said now. I will put it to you that, when this miserable budget arrives in October, we find out exactly what damage it's going to be. There is going to be a large chunk of people's tax revenue that is going to go to either paying your union mates or, crucially, illegal immigrants.
Well, paying your union mates, Patrick, actually means paying teachers, nurses and the people who deliver our frontline public services on which we all rely at the wage that they deserve, and that was set by an independent pay review body.
Going up to pay for illegal immigrants.
Absolutely. Look, in terms of this is an absolute disgrace. The Tories told Parliament they were going to put 300 million quid in the asylum budget, and in fact, when the IFS today has found that there was a black hole, not one that was known about. This is the independent, respected Institute of Fiscal Studies that has support across is respected across the political spectrum. It found that there is this huge black hole of billions, and yes, that is going to have to be paid for because the Tories ran up that bill. James Cleverly, who was Home Secretary, who didn't apologise today, he should have been on his knees apologising for this. He said, so what we need to do is we need a system that works, that doesn't that people are processed quickly, where people are processed quickly, and people who shouldn't be in the country are sent back.
We would all agree with that. What is that system? Because we're not hearing the answers here. All you're doing is what Keir Starmer keeps doing. The Tories did this, they did that, and then he does a whole summary of what's happened. Then there's no answers to
No, there is none, because, the first thing to do is to actually process people, which wasn't happening under the Tories, was they were sitting in hotels at the expense of the taxpayer, and it's been a national disgrace.
Can I just say one thing? The Tory government couldn't stand and say, what a good job they did. They did not do a good job. They definitely could have.
We can agree on that,
Let's be clear about that. But also, what's important is that job was made infinitely harder by the Labour Party and people on the left campaigning against every single idea that the government came up with, and that pushed the bill as well. And I go back to the point that Labour have no plan.
But the Tory party did have a majority, and actually they were fighting themselves. So, I agree, they did a terrible job.
Yeah, they did a terrible. I wouldn't sit here and tell they did a good job. But the worry is now, Labour have been given this responsibility and have no plan. And it isn't good enough just to say the Tories did terribly. What are you going to do for the country?
What are they going to do?
Do you mean the plan on immigration?
Well, the plan on immigration...
endless plans. We're going to discuss in the next hour rather too many plans.
How are they going to spend less than the Conservative government before them? That's what we want to know. What are they going to do different?
Well, Rachel Reeves has asked every department to find savings. I think there's a danger that she becomes the Iron Chancellor, but we have to sort out this migration mess. We have to start having... The key thing is to send people who aren't back, who shouldn't be here, which is why Yvette Cooper's Home Secretary has put an emphasis on repatriating people when their asylum claims have failed. And we've seen some flights already, but we need to see a lot more.
Here, then. So you're going to let them come here, and then you're going to...
Because we're working internationally. That's why the new cross-border police force. That's why smashing the gangs. Patrick will laugh when I say that. It takes time because you want fewer people arriving, and we need to work together with Europe, which is why you've seen him talking to Macron and Scholz over the last few days.
Hang on a second. Working together with Germany on this is literally working together with the people who created this mess. What Angela Merkel did to the continent of Europe is an absolute disgrace, and we can never go back from it. That woman deserves a huge amount of criticism for that. But just to talk about the social contract now, OK, between ordinary, hard-working British people and the government, right? And when you look at now the tax bills, we all know the tax bills have been astronomically high already. They're going up again. It's going to be a miserable budget, OK? And you're going to see things like inheritance tax probably go up. People who've worked all the lives for it. And a huge chunk of that money now is going to go so that people who have just arrived in Britain can live in nicer conditions. And that, I'm sorry, but I can see, I'm not encouraging any, I can see protests about that.
Well, I'm just sick to my back teeth of it. I've had enough, but I know if I go and protest, I'll be probably called a racist, and then I may be locked up simply for being part of any sort of protest if anything bad happens whilst I'm there. Look, I genuinely think that the British people have a right to get an answer from the Labour government as to how they're going to spend the money and where that money's going to go. I'm sick and tired of all the fact that we are funding appeals. I think maybe you could can appeal once, and then if you fail your asylum, we should not have to fund it. It's the whole legal system behind it as well. What are the Labour Party going to do to change that, to stop this repeated appeal? What are they going to do? We want to know, not smashing the gangs. They're already here.
I think the financial burden coming for the country needs to go wider. Now, immigration is one thing, but the Labour government has to explain how it's going to have this very high level of public service and how it's going to pay for it. They made great arguments about the high level of the tax burden, where they are absolutely going to add to that now, and they can't have it both ways. They either believe we should lower the tax burden, or they believe we should have all of these services. There's a tough nut for them to crack.
They say the latest from the NHS, for example, is, and, you know, it's approaching that time of year again, isn't it? Winter crisis. But they say that, right, if you give us just another £3 billion, all right, we might be able to get a handle on the waiting list. I think most people in Britain would rather give the NHS £4 or £5 billion and not give, what's it going to work out as, £8 billion for illegal immigration?
Well, I don't think anybody would disagree with you, Patrick, and that's why we need an asylum system that works, that doesn't pay people to sit in doesn't pay for people to sit in hotels for month after month, which sends people back who shouldn't be here, which sees fewer people arriving on our shores because we've taken international action to do that, processes people quickly and sends people home who shouldn't be here.
You're just doing what Keir Starmer does, listing all the things that we need, which everyone would agree with.
Well, that's what they're going to do. They've only had 7 weeks now.
They're coming out with absolutely no solutions. 7 weeks, so what? It's irrelevant. What are they going to do about it?
You need to make your mind up. 1 minute you say you've done more than the last government did in the whole of its...
I think that wasn't a wise line of his.
Or you've only had 7 weeks. The point here is, right, look, I want the Labour government to succeed because this is a pivotal time for this country. We've already seen riots in the streets where people are disgruntled about the social contract.
Yep.
We are very worried about the costs going forward. I want to see them succeed, but what they're going to have to do is admit that we're about to see Labour austerity or the country goes under. There isn't two. That's
because we've got to pay for the bills that you left us with.
No, you can't blame the Conservative Party.
We can when they left a massive deficit.
Yeah. All right, guys.